Welcome into Around the Octagon, our UFC 302 prediction podcast. We got the whole crew here tonight, excited to dive into this card with you fellas right in our backyard in Newark, New Jersey. Unfortunately, we are not making the trip to Newark this year, but still really excited for this card. But before we dive into it, gentlemen, we got a lot of fight news to touch on. UFC 303, the card led by Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, has added Ian Gary versus Michael Venom Page. A really fun matchup stylistically. Curious your guys' initial thoughts on this fight. Does Ian Gary keep the winning streak alive, or is MVP going to take him down?
Yeah, that should be a fun one. I like the stylistic matchup. I'm kind of leaning Gary initially, to be honest. I'm rooting for MVP. I feel it could be cool to see him climb the ranks before, and I mean, while he has the time to, but my gut kind of has me going with Gary. But I mean, it's still very far out. I could switch up on that.
Yeah, MVP is up there in age, and but there's always a chance. I mean, MVP looked good against Kevin Holland. I think this is Gary's like probably first real test in the UFC. I mean, he handled Magny with ease, which is not to go unnoticed, and he probably should be fighting Colby Covington. I would have liked to see that a lot more than MVP, but I think I'm going MVP on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I just think it's so funny that Ian Gary, for what the last month, has been like, I'm only fighting guys higher than me in the rankings. And, Dana makes the
Yeah,
calls at the end of the day. I have MVP here. I think he looked amazing against Holland. I had Holland in that fight. Um, I think it's a three-rounder. Do we know that yet?
I think it's three. Yeah,
Yeah, it's three.
I think that favors MVP too. I think it's going to take Gary a little bit of time to figure MVP out. His unorthodox style of fighting. It's just, you never know what he's going to hit you with. I got MVP.
Yeah, I mean, this should be a great striking match. Gary, his last couple fights really just made me nervous in the first round and almost all of them. Like, he just kind of seems like a slow starter. I think against a guy like MVP, that's pretty dangerous. I was a big fan of Ian Gary when he first came in the UFC. I've kind of, I don't know, like you mentioned, Luke, it bothered me. He's like, all this talk, he's only fighting guys above him, and then all this stuff with Colby Covington, and now he's fighting down, and he's saying, "Oh, no one wants to fight me," this and that, and it's just like, I don't know. I'm kind of fading away from Gary and his personality. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that.
Yeah, I will say too. I mean, going back to like him saying he's fighting up in the rankings, I don't know if there's many matchups for him up in the rankings. I mean, there's Covington, but obviously that didn't happen for whatever reason. And like, who else is he gonna fight up in the rankings right now? I mean, Shavkat already has a fight. I don't really know who else he would have fought. So I know he like touched on it and was like, well, there was really no offer for me to fight up in the rankings, so I want to stay active. So I guess that's how it came to fruition. But I mean, yeah, it is pretty funny.
yeah. You hear a little bit about him here and there, like getting like asked to leave gyms for like excessive filming and stuff like that. I know that happened with Leon Edwards' gym. But I think I forgot to mention this. The reason why I'm going with MVP here is because he got dropped by Song Kenan in their fight. So I mean, I feel like MVP on a level of striking and Song Kanong's like levels above. And if you can get dropped by like a left hook from Song Kanong, I think MVP can do it much faster and a lot easier.
That's a good point, Rye. That's a good point. Another fight announced for 303. Jamal Hill is fighting Carlos Ulberg in this one. Ryan, that's your boy Jamal Hill. Do you think Jamal Hill gets it done, Ryan?
Uh, Honestly, no. Just because I feel like the turnaround's like way too fast for like Pereira did knock him out, and he's coming back like what 2 months later, like 2.5 months later. It's just I feel like the turnaround's like way too short. I get he's trying to prove a point that like he could take on Pereira again and not like it was a fluke, but I think when you just get dropped like that, you need to take some time off. And Wahlberg has wicked power, fast hands, and I think it just becomes a trouble for him in all aspects.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will side with Hill here. I agree that it takes some time after a knockout, but I think you also have to wait certain knockouts against other knockouts. He got knocked out. He was done. Clean, good call, but at the same time, he got up pretty fast. It wasn't like, when Volk got knocked out by Islam where he was like out, or even Taporia. Like, I think the 2.5 month turnaround for a guy in his position, I think he's the better fighter here. He's fought better people. I have him here. I think he'll, put himself right back up in that conversation, even if he is not out of it right now.
Yeah, I have Jamal Hill in this one too. And the turnaround is quick, but again, like you touched on, like it wasn't like the lights were completely out there. So like I do think, 2.5 months, it is quick, but it's not like he needs a full 3 months with no contact to get back into it or anything. And I mean, he's definitely more battle tested. And I haven't really watched a crazy amount of Oberg. I mean, I watched his like last couple fights, but I mean, he hasn't fought anywhere near the level of competition that Hill has. So I'm leaning with Hill on that one.
No, I understand that. I think I guess it's just exciting too because like Goldberg represents a new face in the division if he can get it done, and it just opens up like new title challengers for a division that's pretty dry right now. Of Ankalaev only saying he's going to fight Pereira in Abu Dhabi in October. So
Yeah. He
I would
is Oberg
agree.
is Oberg is on a 6 fight win streak, which is pretty impressive. So I think this is a perfect time for him to, take that jump up in the rankings. So should be an interesting one.
Yeah, the timing could work out well for Olberg with the short notice for Hill. Let's transition to 304. A lot of fights announced. Leon Edwards will defend his belt against my least favorite fighter in UFC, Bilal Muhammad. Your guys' initial thoughts? I'm going Leon here, night and day. Bilal has not finished anyone ever, and I think Leon is just a more battle-tested fighter. He's better. We saw Bilal win against Gilbert Burns with a bum shoulder for 5 rounds in Newark, and it was brutal. And if he couldn't knock down Gilbert Burns and finish him there, I don't know how he's. I don't see him knocking out Leon Edwards in this one. I also don't see him outstriking him and beating him, going the distance. But your guys' thoughts here? Is anyone going to go with Bilal Muhammad?
I am not going with Bilal Muhammad. I think Leon's going to walk him around. I mean, if Usman wasn't able to successfully wrestle, if Usman wasn't able to successfully wrestle him, I don't see how Bilal would be able to. I see it staying on the feet. I see Bilal just picking him apart. I could see maybe Bilal stealing a round off Leon, but that's about it. I'd probably go like 49-46 Leon.
yeah, I'm in like the like obviously I'm rooting for Leon Edwards, but I could also like I don't know how good of a grappler or like a wrestler Bilal Muhammad is because we haven't seen him fight really any of those like other high level like wrestlers like Usman in the division. I mean, he was able to take down Gilbert, which doesn't say much because like Gilbert had a torn shoulder through 4 rounds. So like the grappling could be like a factor. And if he's able to just ride out Leon Edwards for like 3.5, 4 rounds, he might be able to sneak like a majority decision, which scares me because I want Leon to win. But then again, I mean, Leon also, when they fought the first time, abandoned like most of his like stylistic game plan, was just throwing blows at Bilal because I'm pretty sure he hates the guy. So I could see Leon just like trying to just exchange with him in the pocket and just getting a little reckless, which I think could lead him to a pretty fast finish.
Yeah, I don't see any way Muhammad gets this done here. I agree that he probably has the edge in wrestling, but like we said, I mean, Leon's now beaten Usman twice and Kobe in his last 3 fights, all better wrestlers than Bilal. And like we said, he handled his own. And when this fight got announced on my Twitter feed, was flowing in like highlights of that first round against Bilal before the eye poke, and Leon was piecing him up. I don't see this fight going any different. I got Leon. I think he could finish him in the later rounds too. We haven't really seen Bilal in late rounds. I know they normally have wrestlers have great gas tanks, but I'll probably take Leon, third, fourth, fifth TKO.
It does scare me that Bilal is training with Habib and them, so that is what gets me a little bit nervous there. But yeah, I don't really see Bilal's route to victory in this one.
All right. Also on UFC 304, Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades. Obviously, Aspinall hurt his leg, and it was a doctor stoppage finish, whatever you want to call it, 2 years ago. I actually saw that Curtis Blades opened his UFC career as a favorite in his first 14 fights, which is the most all time. I did not know that, but it just speaks to how good Blades is. Do you guys see Aspinall getting it done this time around, bearing, of course, no serious injury?
Yeah, speaking on that 14 fight, being favored in his first 14 fights, I think Islam just tied that with this one. So
Yes.
I think, yeah, I think I saw that too. It is a dangerous matchup for Aspinall, but I mean, Tom is so well rounded. I see Tom getting the job done there, getting Blades down on the ground. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think striking advantage definitely favors Tom Aspinall. I think that's going to be the biggest part of this fight. Curtis Blades obviously wicked on the ground, phenomenal wrestling. But same said with Tom Aspinall and grappling. I think he's been grappling and he's been doing jujitsu since he was like 5 years old. So definitely like keep in mind there. And then it all depends, I think, what Curtis Blade's game plan is. Like we saw him fight and get knocked out by Sergey. He didn't shoot for like a single takedown that fight, and I guess that's just up in the air on whether or not he sticks to like his wrestling background and gives Tom Aspinall some trouble. But I see a Tom Aspinall like round 2 or 3 KO.
Yeah. Initially, I actually love this fight. I think it's kind of got the Sugar Sean Cheeto vibes. Like, obviously, we could spend an hour talking about the John Jones situation. I'm fine with John Jones sitting out and waiting for that belt, waiting for that legendary title fight, heavyweight for the GOAT heavyweight. Um, so I'm fine with this fight. I think Aspinall, I understand his frustration a little bit, but at the same time, like you get back to one loss in the UFC, um, you retain the interim belt, and then you see what happens, down the line. I'm guessing John Jones fights in November at MSG. It's probably what they're targeting. That'll be a huge card. Hopefully we make it there, but I'm fine with this fight. I do have Aspinall. I think I think that champion status, he's just so driven right now. I can't see him losing. And I think that get back really motivates a lot of guys in the UFC.
I agree, Luke. I like that you brought up the whole John Jones situation. We could go on forever about it. I think Aspinall's going to win this fight. My only concern would be that he's looking ahead to trying to fight John Jones and isn't fully locked in on the task at hand. But Tom's a professional. He's a beast. I'm sure he'll be fine. I think he gets it done here. And the last fight we will talk about in fight news, a big step up in competition for Paddy the Baddy Pimblett on UFC 304 against Bobby Green. I mean, I don't know about you guys. This makes me really nervous for Paddy. I've been rooting for Paddy the past couple years, but I don't know. Bobby Green's battle tested. This is a tough one for me. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, Patty's gonna need to get him down to the ground early before Bobby can start piecing him apart on the feet. I actually like Bobby to win this one. Patty, Patty kind of pisses me off a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. And if he tries to trade with Bobby Green, it's not gonna end well. I think that chin will get tested definitely. But if he can get him down and work his jujitsu game, maybe he can find a sub. But I'd favor Bobby in this one.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I favor Bobby too. I mean, he did look phenomenal against Jim Miller, and I mean, I guess both of them are up there in age, but Patty like has obviously definitely exposed a lot of holes in his game throughout all of his fights. I mean, he's been cracked in every single one of his fights. You could argue a robbery against I'm blanking on the dude's name. But
I'm
you know what I'm
blanking too,
talking
but I
about.
know the exact fight you're talking about.
Like that was a pretty controversial decision that went in his
Jared
favor.
Gordon.
Jared
Yeah.
Gordon, yeah.
Yep.
So, like I said, like a lot of holes in his game between that fight, even his first fight where he got cracked with like a mean right hook, and throughout all
Tony
the
cracked him
others.
too. Tony cracked him too.
Exactly. So like the chin's definitely there to be hit, and like he always says like I'm a scouser, we don't get knocked out, or like I need to at least get one good punch in the face before I wake up and I'm ready to fight. Like I don't think you can do that against a striker like Bobby Green.
Yeah, I think the season Bobby Green will show in this fight. I think it's a good step up for, Patty. I'm excited to see this fight. I think Bobby Green obviously has gained popularity later in his career, and he's now become like kind of the high ticket guy in a lot of prelims. Right now, they have this fight as the last prelim. So I think this is just a great introduction to the main card of this card 304. So I'm excited for this fight. I'm leaning towards Bobby as well. But I'm happy to see, Patty take a little bit of a step up in competition. Hasn't been as active as I would have liked him to be, over these last couple of years. But I think this could be the start. If he gets this win, this propels him, I think Bobby's 14th right now. So might propel
Okay.
him into the rankings. We'll
Would
see.
you guys have preferred to see the Moicano fight for Patty or this Bobby Green fight?
I think Bobby Green. I think Moicano's at another level of both popularity and skill right now. I think the Jalen Turner win kind of propels him. I think it'd be a huge step down for him. So I like this fight better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Moicano's riding a good fight win streak, and he's up there in age. Also, higher level. He's been facing higher level competition than Paddy Pimblett for like the last 3 of his fights. So it's definitely better for him to try to look forward and get that belt and ride the popularity that he's gained since the UFC 300 and his fights before that.
I just hope if Patty wins this, he stops blowing up 50 pounds between fights and actually starts locking in and getting more active and trying to climb the ranks, because if he wins this, he has a chance to crack the rankings. But, I hope I mean, I'm not saying he's not, invested, but I hope he takes more pride in his training afterwards. But all right, guys, let's transition into the UFC 302 card. Starting us off, Mitch Raposo, a plus 200 dog versus Andre Lima, minus 245. Raposo is 0-1 in the UFC, lost by submission in Dana White Contender Series, while Lima is 2-0 in the UFC with a win in the Dana White Contender Series by UD and a win 2 months ago. So, what are you guys thinking here?
I mean, Raposo's had 2 shots to crack into the UFC. I know he was on The Ultimate Fighter back in 2021 where he lost round 1. Then obviously, like you just said, he lost the Dana White Contender Series. So he's kind of only getting this shot because I think Lima had 2 opponents back out. And it seems like a favorable matchup for Lima. I mean, especially after getting bit his last fight. I think they threw him one, a winnable fight. I see the kickboxer utilizing his reach advantage there and outstriking Raposo on his way to like a decision win.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, Zach. Lima definitely looked good in his last fight before he got bit, and taking this fight on short notice, I think, what was it, like a 2-week turn, like a 2-week short notice fight for his opponent doesn't favor you well there, especially when you like are coming off like 2 spotty losses trying to get into the UFC.
Yeah, I also have Lima. I think he's just gonna volume it up here. Raposo, I don't know much about him. I didn't watch his fight before, but I think Lima's undefeated in the UFC right now, and obviously the DQ last fight. But I think this is kind of a feed me fight, like you said, some canceled bouts. I got Lima to kick off the card. Luckily, not a women's fight, so it won't plague us for the rest of the card because I think, have never won a full card betting wise with a woman fight starting off the card. So it's already, in our favor to start this card.
Yeah, definitely. When I saw this, that was exactly what I thought, Luke. I was like, thank God, because that has busted our parlays so many times. Let's move on. Eileen Perez, they had it the second fight in this one. Minus 198 favorite for Jocelyn Edwards, plus 164. Perez is 2-1 in the UFC, both wins by decision, while Edwards is 4-3 in the UFC. All 7 of her fights have gone the distance. So, as a betting man, I would say take the over in this one, but which way are you guys leaning?
Isn't Edwards the chick that just like twerks all the time, or am I getting that from somewhere else? I think she is.
I think that's
I think
Perez.
is that Perez? It's one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Edwards, she has she has like a 4-inch reach advantage. I could see her trying to utilize that to keep Perez at bay, snap her with a jab and whatnot. Perez will probably look to close the distance, take the fight down to the ground. I'm really not too excited about this one, but I would lean Perez via decision, but I don't hate Edwards at plus odds here.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Perez in this one. I think the grappling and that background is just going to play too much of a factor, and she's just going to be able to get Perez or Edwards to the ground and just control her on the ground for 3 rounds and just get like a pretty boring decision.
While I was actually researching this fight, I came across some article or some video, I forget now, but they were talking about Perez was training at the PI, and I guess they have beef, and Edwards came up and sucker punched her. So I think they broke it up, but of course Dana White, the matchmaking god was like, let's just throw them in a fight together in the UFC. So I'm leaning towards Perez. I agree. I think Edwards, in the multiple fights I've seen her fight, has never really impressed me. And I think Perez is, more of a motivated fighter at this point in her career. So I got Perez.
All right, let's move on. Mickey Gall, plus 280 versus Basil Hafix, minus 355. Our first big favorite on the card. Gall is only 6-5 in the UFC and on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost his last fight to Mike Mallet by knockout. And I'm sure Gall is most famous for the win against CM Punk back in 2016. Hafix lost his only fight in the UFC, but it was to Jack Della Maddalena by split decision, who is no slouch. I'm going with Hafix here. Huge favorite. Gall just kind of seems like the last kind of days in the UFC for me, but your guys' thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that Mickey Gall is only 7-5. Like you hear his name. I mean, I guess not a crazy amount. He's very inactive, but a lot of people know the name. I kind of thought he was better than that before, like looking into him more. But I know, but I mean, Basil he did have that great fight against JDM. I know he also trains with Usman, so I mean it's pretty cool. I mean I know he's trained with Usman, I should say. He should also hold the power advantage, and I see Basil winning this fight. I
Yeah, I
don't know. I'd
agree.
probably go. Oh yeah, sorry, Ryan. I'd probably go decision, but
Yeah, I just think strength's gonna play a big factor in this one. I was watching the Mickey Gall and Mike Perry fight, and it was like pretty noticeable that Gall has a clear advantage on like the grappling aspect, like black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, good submissions. He kind of struggles with guys that can just like are like significantly stronger than him and like can overpower him. And Mike Perry pretty much proved that when they fought. But I think Basil is just like he's ripped. One, he's huge. He took on Jack Del Maddalena on short notice and brought him to a split decision, which is very, very impressive. And I'm actually excited to see what he can do on a full training camp. I think maybe third round KO, TKO on ground and pound if he tires out Gall enough, but I have this one going to decision as well.
Yeah, I thought the JDM Chavez fight was amazing. I had Chavez winning that fight. I think it could go either way. I think it helped JDM. Obviously, the trajectory of his career is on the bound to make a title contention. But yeah, I think Mickey Gall gets a lot of rep in these parts because he fights out of New Jersey, and I like the guy, as an individual. But I just don't see. I think Chavez has a legit chance to kind of storm up these rankings and be one of the top guys in the division in a couple years. So I got Chavez too.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on. Nico Price plus 195 dog versus Alex Morono minus 238. These guys actually fought back in 2017, and it was a no contest. Price is 7-7 in the UFC with 2 no contests. Lost his last 2 to Robbie Lawler and Phil Rowe, who's actually the next fight on this card, and that was by knockout for both of them. Best win recently was Alex Oliveira back in 2021. Meanwhile, Morono is 13-6 in the UFC. 2-2 in his last 4 with a UD win against Court McGee in the last fight. The fight before that lost to Joaquin Buckley. Guys, are you going to go with the underdog here, Nico Price, the second time around?
no, I'm gonna stick with being chalky here. I mean, Price has 1 win in his last 6 fights. I mean, the fight will most likely stay in its feet where Price does have the reach advantage and he does have knockout power, but he hasn't found one since 2019. I think he's gonna get outworked to a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when they first fought, I think Price still had a relatively good chin because Morono was doing good work on the feet when they first fought. And I think after the Robbie Lawler fight, you kind of just saw that like Nico Price's with all the battles he's been in, the chin just can't withstand those like bigger shots that allow you to tire out your opponent, wear him down, and just get like find your finish or like sneak out rounds in rounds 2 or 3. So I got Morono by round 2 KO here.
Yeah, I'm on Morono as well. I think he's just a overall more technical fighter. I think Nico Price on the other side is very, unpredictable. And I think last fight, was it his last fight when he lost to Robbie Lawler? I
Yeah.
think that I was actually on Nico Price that fight, and I was surprised with how fast he got finished. So I think he could easily put himself in danger. And the technicality of Morono is just gonna be too much around over 15 minutes in the cage.
I agree with all you guys. I'm also going to go with Morono here. Although Price is definitely entertaining, it can land a big shot and can get the finish. I just think it seems unlikely here. Morono is more technically sound. I think he gets it done via decision. Next, Phil Rowe plus 140 versus Jake Matthews minus 170. Rowe is 4-2 in the UFC. The last fight was an L to Neil Magny by a split decision. Meanwhile, Matthews, 12-7 UFC, has lost 3 of his last 5. Couple of guys that need a win right here. Matthews or Rowe? Who we going with?
Yeah, I'm not really too in love with either of these guys, to be honest. Bro really hasn't beat anyone good. Matthews has lost to some questionable fighters as of late, but Rowe does hold a massive reach advantage. I think it's like 7.5 inches. He does have some power too. It's very like snappy. So I do have Rowe. I'm going with the underdog in Rowe. I could see him potentially getting a TKO.
I'm also going with the underdog and bro. I think that massive discrepancy in reaches is going to be too much for Jake Matthews to close the distance and find like the takedown and the grappling that he needs to most likely win this fight. But I also don't like Jake Matthews after he KO'd Andre Fiallo and ruined that exciting 4-fight win streak and fast turnarounds. I mean, granted, Fiallo has looked like dog shit in all the fights he's fought after that, but I'll never forgive him for it. Because that was like one prospect I was super excited for coming up.
I think that was it was a fight night that had all finishes, right? It was like 12 straight finishes, and if you parlayed it, it was like $5 to win 10 grand or something.
Yeah.
And that was yeah. I'm actually a fan of Jake Matthews. I think he's entertaining. Every fight that I watch of his, I'm hoping he wins. This is probably the first one I'm on the dog as well. I'm taking Phil Rowe. I just think which he already does very well, but I think if he stays at a distance and, kills him with that jab and keeps the distance, doesn't let him get in the pocket, he has a great chance of winning this. I think Matthews has to make this into a dog fight to win this. I don't think this will be a parlay piece, but my pick is Phil Rowe.
I'm actually going to go with Rowe. So we just swept the board with the underdog. So potentially it is going to be a parlay piece.
Maybe not a parlay piece. Maybe we throw out a little underdog play.
Yeah,
The boys
a
are
little
all in a row.
underdog play. But all four of us end up going on with the underdog and Phil Rowe at plus 140. Man, I hope that doesn't bite us in the ass. Let's move on. Grant Dawson, minus 410, another big favorite versus Joe Selecki at plus 320. Dawson is 9-1-1 in the UFC. Lost his last fight against Bobby Green, got knocked out in 33 seconds. So it'll be interesting to see how Dawson bounces back. While Selecki is 6-2 in the UFC, lost his last fight by a knockout via slam to Drakkar Close, but he did beat Jim Miller. So that's a good win. Where are you guys going with here? Two guys that I think are some good fighters.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, both these guys love to wrestle, and I think Dawson is just the better wrestler. It's simple as that. He doesn't have to worry about the KO power like from Bobby Green. So I'm kind of expecting a boring fight here where Dawson just racks out some control time on his way to a decision win. Maybe he walks in like a body triangle and just controls him, but I see it being kind of boring, and he just racks up control time and wins that way.
I agree. Definitely a fight for the fans that favor grappling. I agree with you too, Zach. Grant Dawson's definitely the favorite when it comes to the wrestling and the grappling department. And I think that fight with Bobby Green is a one that like teaches you a lesson. Maybe doesn't come in as reckless, plays it very safe, tries to dictate the fight his way, and gets it done by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I'm on Dawson as well. Just like you guys have already said, the grappling, I think Selecki might be a little bit better jiu-jitsu guy. So off his back, he might be a little bit better. But Grant Dawson has showed, top control. And one thing I like about him is he always stays active when he's on top, always like hammering down punches, changing position. So I have him actually by ground and pound TKO in the second.
Nice. I'm also on Dawson this one. Before we hop to the next fight, can you guys hear the lightning that's snapping in Hoboken right now?
Now you're clear.
No.
All right. So the mic doesn't pick that up, but oh my God, dude, it is downpouring here right now.
Spooky night in Hoboken. You should go try to meet all the fighters tonight, Tom.
Yeah. Where do you think they're going out in Hoboken?
Take a little
down to Texas,
Jersey City.
One.
Down to Texas, Arizona. All right, let's move on. Cesar Almeida, minus 118 versus Roman Kopylov, minus 102. This is one of the fights I'm most excited for on this card. Almeida is a stud. 2-0 in the UFC. Wins over Dylan Butka back in April by knockout, and Lucas Fernando on the Dana White Contender Series. But man, he's looking really good. And Kopylov, 4-3 in the UFC. Lost his last fight against Anthony Hernandez via rear naked choke, which ended his 4-fight win streak. I remember we were not happy with that one, gentlemen. Kind of screwed our parlay, but it's fine. I'm still on the Kopylov train in this one. I think he was looking pretty good in round 2 before he got subbed by Hernandez, but Hernandez did take him down 3 times. Fortunately for him, I don't think Almeida is going to take him down in this fight. Who are you guys going with?
Yeah, I think this is a potential fight of the night candidate going into it. I'm really excited for this fight. Both these guys are going to look to stand and strike. It's going to be kind of like a glorified kickboxing match. Obviously, Kopylov has fought the better competition, but I heard that Almeida and his camp are the ones who called for this fight. So, I mean, he thinks he's prepared. I know he has he's kickboxed Alex Poatan Pereira 3 times. He's 1-2 there. And for that reason, just him calling for the fight, and maybe I'm just a little hearing, oh, he kickboxed Alex Pereira. Maybe that's just, maybe I'm just thinking here, but I want to go Almeida. I'm leaning Almeida.
Personally, I'm going Kopylov. I think Almeida might have bitten off a little more than he can chew here. I've taken the guy with like the veteran experience in the UFC, and I mean, nothing for nothing. Kopylov's looked good in pretty much all of his fights. He has some wicked striking. He was also a sambo combat champion growing up, so like the grappling there and the wrestling background is still there, and it can come into play. Like he has it, if he wants it, but he doesn't really go for it just because his striking's so crisp. And he also won me and Tong a pretty hefty bag on that Gaethje Dustin card. So
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, I'm on Kopylov as well. Like you said, Almeida has fought Poatan, who, as if you listen to the show, that's our guy. But that was 11 years ago. Most recently, 9 years ago, and that's a long time ago. I think he's 36 right now. So I think when you go two guys with very similar styles, like Ryan said, you have to take in the UFC experience. Last fight for Kopylov was against Fluffy. Fluffy's a dog. I know you guys were against him, but I've been betting on him, a lot recently. He's won me some good money and good parlay pieces. I have Kopylov here. I think just the younger guy, like you said, the UFC experience. I think he's going to get right back on that winning streak. And I think as a 36-year-old, it's kind of hard. Your chin does wear with age, and I think the ability for Kopylov to knock him out, probably with the high kick, is high in the later rounds of this fight.
I'm also going to go with Kopylov. I'm a big fan of Kopylov and his style, so hopefully he gets it done here. Next, Randy Brown, -175 versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, +145. Brown is 12-5 in the UFC on a 2-fight win streak after losing to Jack Della Maddalena by rear naked choke. Has lost to Vincent Luque, Nico Price, and Bilal Muhammad as well throughout his career. So when he's lost, it's been to some good competition. Dos Santos 10-3-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a draw, but he did beat Abubakar Nurmagomedov and Benoit Saint Denis in his 2-fight priors. Also beat Strickland back in 2018. And his last 5 fights have all gone the distance. Where are you guys leaning here?
I'm leaning Randy Brown here. I know both these guys are going to look to strike, but Brown does hold a 5-inch reach advantage. I know Dos Santos, when he fights, he likes to move forward and pressure. So, I mean, I can't see him getting in Randy Brown's face and causing some problems there, but I just can't be on the side of the guy who's 37 years old and aging. So that's kind of what edged me to lead towards Brown.
I agree, Zach. It was the same. I think age played a big factor in this one for me. Although Zaleski dos Santos does have some very notable wins, even the draw itself and Rahim like Fakaredov or however the hell you pronounce his name is very impressive. That's a guy that's coming up and he's on a tear before that fight. But given age and the reach advantage, I'm taking Brown here.
I'm going opposite of you guys. I'm going Zaleski. I think, like you said, he's been in the cage with some dogs. I mean, he beat BSD, and if you remember that fight, he had him rocked early. BSD being the dog that he is, he stayed up, and it went to UD. I just think Randy Brown has always been super close. I think the age might actually play a positive factor. I think the same kind of fight that it was with Phil Rowe. If he can get in the pocket, I think Zaleski can, get a finish here. So I'm going Zaleski. Sorry.
I'm going to go with Brown. He stands 6'3". He's younger. He's faster. Ultimately, that's what got it done for me in this one. But this is one I'm not very confident in, one that is not going to end up in any of my parlays. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to fade this one betting.
For me, this was definitely one of the harder picks. I think the line's the way it is for a reason. What is it now?
I saw Brown -175, Zaleski +145. That was via the UFC website, but they also don't update that very often, so it could have moved more towards a pick'em.
Yeah, and look what you were saying. I mean, Zaleski's going to look to get in the pocket, and he does fight forward. He does apply pressure, so I can't see him getting in the pocket. So I'm leaning Brown, but I'm not too confident in it. I'm not going to bet it.
Yeah, me either. This will be in the, however many fights, 12 or 13 fight parlay, and that's probably it.
Next, Gelton Almeida -270 versus Alexander. I had to put this in. King Kong Romanov, just because I love the nickname. +220. Almeida is 7-1 in the UFC. Did lose his last fight to Curtis Blades by knockout, so could be a wake-up call for him. He did beat Derek Lewis by UD and subbed Rosenstrike by rear naked choke his 2 fights prior, so also has some pedigree there. Romanov is 6-2 in the UFC. His last fight was a win against Blagoy Ivanov by UD, and that's after he lost to Alexander Volkov by knockout in his fight prior. Zach, are you leading Almeida this one, the -270 favorite?
Yeah, I'm leaning Almeida. I think he gets back on track here. I think he holds the advantage in the striking department. I think he has more power, and he's obviously a great grappler as well. Romanov has also had some cardio issues where I expect Almeida to take full advantage of. I think he'll wear him down over the course of 3 rounds and potentially end up getting a finish round 2 or 3 after Romanov fades.
Yeah, Zach, I agree too. I think it's similar in circumstances like Grant Dawson's loss to Bobby Green, where he knows now, you learn a little bit from it and you get that experience and you learn, not to shoot sloppy takedowns and you try to dictate the fight more your way and you play it a little bit safer and just try to wear the guy out. So I have Almeida again here by like a unanimous decision.
Yep, I'm on board with you guys. I think the Almeida hype was a little early and it came out a little too strong, but I definitely think that this is a bounce back fight for him. He's still a huge prospect in the heavyweight division, and I don't see Romanov knocking him out. And just like you guys said, he's going to fade. Bounce back spot for Almeida. I got him winning this one.
Yeah, I think Almeida wins this one pretty dominantly. He's more athletic. He has a striking advantage. I'm almost leaning by finish. I think he's going to get a second round knockout, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the distance. Next, Kevin Holland -285 versus Michelle Oleksichuk at +215. That's a mouthful. Holland is 13-8-1 in the UFC, has lost his last 2 to MVP, as we mentioned earlier, and Jack Della Maddalena, who, by the way, has beaten a lot of guys on this card. That both of those were by decision. His last win was against Michael Chiesa by Darce choke, which is, not very common in the UFC. Michel is 7-5 in the UFC, lost his last fight to Michel Pereira by a rear naked choke. I don't know about you guys. I'm definitely going Kevin Holland on this one. I think he's the way better and more experienced fighter. I actually think he gets it done by submission. He has 7 career wins by sub, while his opponent has lost 5 times via sub. So that's the method of victory I'm going with. Zach, do you agree with me?
Yeah, I think it's a very favorable matchup for Hollins. He should hold the advantage literally everywhere. Better striking. I know Oleg doesn't have too great of a ground game. And I mean, Holland just has a much longer reach advantage. But I mean, Holland is pretty weird, but I see Holland getting the job done. I could see a submission.
Yeah, I'm torn between submission or KO. I think the fact that this fight's at 185 and Holland's been fighting at 170 favors him immensely. That's like, because you remember when Holland first came on the scene, he went on a 5-fight win streak at 185. That's obviously where he's a lot better as a fighter. That move down to 170 definitely hindered his career a little bit. And also riding a 2-fight losing streak, I think Holland's going to be a little bit more hungrier for this one. Realizes now like he has to get it done unless he wants his name to like fade away into the relics. So I think Holland's going to try to put on a performance, and I think he can get it done either by sub or KO.
Yeah, with you guys, I love Holland. I think he's an entertaining fighter. I think he's a big draw for the UFC, and the UFC tends to do this thing where they give Holland really tough matchups, and if he comes up short, they give him, not going to say one of the bottom feeders, but definitely lesser competition than what he's been fighting. I don't see any path to victory for his opponent here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. I got Holland. This will be a parlay piece. I agree. I think I'll take him finish. I don't know. I feel like he could sub him easily. He can knock him out with the reach advantage because they're going to stand and bang for at least a whole first round. So we'll see, but I'll probably just take it by finish.
Awesome, gentlemen. Let's move on to the co-main event. Former champ Sean Strickland at -245 versus Paulo Costa at +200. Strickland 15-6 in the UFC. Lost his belt to Dricus du Plessis by split decision in his last fight, and that was after dominating Izzy for the title. Meanwhile, Costa is 6-3 in the UFC. He's lost 3 of his last 4. Izzy for the belt, which was he got knocked out. Vettori, he lost by UD. And his last fight to Robert Whitaker by UD. However, he almost did knock out Whitaker in the first round. He did beat Luke Rockhold 2 fights ago by UD. My question for you guys, are we going to see the Sean Strickland that we saw against Izzy, where he fought like he had nothing to lose, he was the aggressor, or are we going to see him fight like he did against DDP, where he almost looked a little content, like wanting to not make a mistake as he was the champion?
I mean, that's a tough question. I'm not really sure how he's going to come out, but just circling to back to Paulo Costa. I mean, he hasn't really looked full form ever since that Romero win, or I mean, I guess really ever since he got humped by Izzy. But I mean, he did look to be more back to himself in that Whitaker fight. But like you were saying, Ryan, the 5-round fight definitely favors Strickland big time. And I mean, Strickland is also hard to hit. So I have Strickland outstriking his way to a decision. But I mean, he has to watch out for that spinning kick from Kosa, because I know he's been knocked out from one of those before. So
Yeah, I think if this fight goes past like 2.5 to 3 round mark, Costa's chances of winning definitely decrease by a dominant margin. Strickland's pretty much very open to those unsusceptible, like unorthodox kicks. So you've seen him get knocked out by those a few times in his career where he just gets caught with something that you don't see coming. But as the fight goes on, 5 rounds, it definitely favors Strickland. And I mean, I don't think he was fighting hesitant Tong when he fought DDP. I mean, I think he fought his game plan. And he was peppering with the jab. I mean, like, granted to Strickland, like, no, in the time that DDP's been fighting, no one's ever seen him taking that much damage. So he definitely did give him like a little bit of what for. I guess you could say controversial decision. Controversial decision. I had it going 2-2, had it 2-2 going into the fifth, and I thought Strickland did enough to take the fifth round, but I was wrong. But then again, I mean, 5 round fight favors Strickland. I take Strickland by decision. Maybe late fifth round TKO. I mean, I'm going to bet on that, but other than that, use the decision.
Yeah, this was definitely a fight that, from the time they announced it, incredibly intrigued. I think there's a couple things that weigh in for me. I think if you go back and watch the Pereira fight against Strickland, Pereira was getting those calves early. And not that Costa's any type of leg kicker as Pereira is, but Costa does throw a good amount of leg kicks. And I think that could play a role in this fight. Strickland's one of the toughest guys, on the roster. So I don't know how much that's going to bother him. But at the same time, when it gets in those later rounds, I was immediately when I found out it was a 5-round fight, I'm like, oh, Strickland's got this. There's no way he's going to get knocked down the first 3. Costa, bigger guy, he's going to start gassing. But at the same time, those calf kicks could come into play. I am leaning towards Strickland, so I'm going to ride with you guys and take Strickland. But I think this is going to be a way closer contest, and I think it could easily go 5, be split 2-2, or yeah, probably be split 2-2 going into the fifth. And I think Strickland just, out cardios Costa here on his way to a victory.
Luke,
I don't
like
think I want to bet this fight, to be honest.
I don't want to either. I love both these guys. I think they're both great for the UFC. I think they're a huge part of why, you take 2 guys and it's not, I guess it's a title eliminator in a way, but it's not, a title fight, and it's a 5-round co-main event. I think this brings in a lot of money for the UFC on a great card.
Luke, I like that you brought up the calf kicks with Pereira, just because I know like Strickland acts like a dumb asshole, like that's his personality, but like you can kind of tell that he does take the game very seriously, because I mean, after getting KO'd to Pereira, he went and trained with him. And then when he fought Izzy, you saw him check like Pereira gave him some pointers. He checked the ridiculous amount of calf kicks in his last 2 fights against Izzy and DDP. So I think like regardless of like the persona that Strickland does tend to put on, you could tell that he does care about the game and improving as a fighter.
And not going to say any names, but we do have an inside source that, was training today up in Jersey City with Sean Strickland and said he went rounds today. So the cardio's there, as always is, and seems to be no injuries going into this fight. I'm excited for this one. I think this is a great co-main event.
Yeah, he's a psychopath. Hard sparring up until like a week before all of his fights is just ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah, we also do have inside sources. Yeah, I think Costa's path to victory here is obviously a finish. You guys highlighted it, but he actually hasn't had a finish since 2018. And when I saw that, I was shocked, like really shocked. So although I did want to go with Paulo Costa, I couldn't, man. I just couldn't. Sean Strickland's fought in those championship rounds. The gas tank's going to be there. He's a tough motherfucker. I got to go with Sean Strickland as badly as I wanted to go Paulo Costa. All right, the main event, Islam Makhachev, also the biggest favorite on the card at -675 versus Dustin Jumpin' Guillotine Poirier at +490. Makhachev, obviously the pound for pound number 1, 14-1 in the UFC with a 13-fight win streak. Beat Charles by sub to win the belt, then defended it twice against Volk. Obviously, there was a controversial unanimous decision, but you know, neither here nor there. This is his first title defense against a true lightweight. However, he would tie Khabib Nurmagomedov with the most title defenses in the division if he were to get it done. And Khabib will be in Makhachev's corner for this one. Poirier 23-8-1 in the UFC. Knocked out Benoit St. Denis to claim this title shot after getting knocked out by a Justin Gaethje head kick in his fight prior. Now, a lot of news with Conor McGregor talking about this fight. He originally said Dustin by KO, and then Dustin said Conor by KO, and everyone's like, wow, some mutual respect from the guys. But if anyone see Conor's Twitter recently, it looks like he's switched, and now he's talking shit to Islam, but now thinks Islam's going to win in the first by submission. Do you guys see any path to victory for Dustin Poirier in this one?
First off, I don't really like how massive this line is, but with that being said, I mean, Dustin does fight really well against other southpaws. We saw that against BSD and McGregor as well. He's usually able to find his shot against southpaws, but I don't really expect Islam to dance around with him for too long. I expect Islam to find his opening, get him on the ground, and just tire out Dustin. And eventually, I think he'll find his opening for a sub. So I see Islam subbing him probably maybe like a round 3 sub.
Yeah, Islam's probably going to win, but I'm taking Dustin just because. No rhyme or reason. I'm just taking Dustin.
Just for fun.
Pretty much just fun. Like I see all these things these past couple of weeks where it's like Paulo Costa, every champion that's fought on a Paulo Costa card with Paulo Costa on their card has lost. It's like 0-8. And then it's like the Russian versus American bias, gotta go American. Dustin's been like pretty adamant that he's gonna knock him out. And this is his third time. I'm a big third time's a charm kind of guy. So Islam's going to win, but I'm taking Dustin.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, this is a heart jerker for UFC fans that, we've been watching a while. Islam clear path to victory. I think there's a lot of things going on. I think Khabib is there, which it hasn't happened in a little bit, to make sure that Islam follows the plan and doesn't, try to prove his stand up against one of the best stand up strikers in the history of the UFC. My gut is I'm gonna throw money on Dustin Poirier. Like, I'm just gonna get that out of the way. He's plus 600 for knockout. I'm taking that. But then I'm also gonna be taking Islam by sub in the second or third. I think Islam is the pound for pound for a reason. He's the better overall fighter. But just like you said, the UFC gods have a weird way of working. This is a storybook layout of things that could happen. You have Justin Gaethje should be fighting for a title, takes the BMF fight, loses that, so now he's out of title contention for the time being. Perfectly lines up that Dustin Poirier gets a shot at the title here. Perfectly. And I think this is just a storybook ending if he gets this done. I was listening to some guys talk about it on the way home today, and they're like, who else in the UFC would you want to see win the belt and then leave the belt in the cage and say, I'm done, I've accomplished all I've accomplished, walk right into the UFC Hall of Fame? So I think if you are a UFC fan, even if you're an Islam fan, there's a little part of you that's like, damn, I want to see Dustin Poirier, get this done, finally get that, undisputed belt wrapped around his waist. So I got Islam by sub in the second or third, but I'm sprinkling Dustin by knockout.
Luke, I agree with every single thing you said, and I'm also doing the same thing. Does it concern you guys that Dustin's talking retirement before the fight, saying win or lose? And, he's done this in the past. He has done this, but he did come back and he said, I want to give it one more shot. And here he is. Just the timing worked out perfectly for Dustin with what's gone on in the division, right? Like, he's not supposed to be here, but he is. It is a storybook ending, but does it concern you guys that he is talking about retirement before fighting the pound for pound #1 in the world?
No, personally, not at all. It's especially because the way that he's presenting it, where it's, I need to see how I feel. He goes, I'm 35, I have a family now. That, like, fighting takes a tremendous toll on your body. I think he said 40 professional fights, 50 on the 50 if you count his amateur scene. He's racked up a lot of damage throughout his career, and I think he's just smart to acknowledge that, where regardless, win or lose, this might be the time to hang him up. And he said, like, he wants to retire from the sport, not the sport retire him. So with that mindset, it doesn't really concern me too much.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Ryan.
Yeah, it reverses for me. I think when you talk retirement, when you back a dog into the corner, he's gonna bite. He's saying, everyone thinks he's gonna lose. He was in an interview, I forget with who, but right away when they're like, "Oh, Islam says he's gonna beat you," I forget what Islam said, but he was like, "I'm gonna knock him out unconscious, and the ref's gonna have to pull me off of him." And that kind of attitude, I think you only really get when a guy's like, "This is do or die." There's no other way out. I lose, I'm done. I win, then I walk off a champion. I think it's the best case scenario for Dustin Poirier. I hope he's healthy. I know we were talking about before with the little staff. There might be a little staff on Islam's leg. Um, Connor called that out on his Twitter. Uh, you never know, man. The ball could just roll. It could roll, and we could be sitting here, Sunday night talking about Dustin Poirier as the lightweight champion of the world.
It gives me shades of Izzy versus Strickland, where you got that quick turnaround for a title fight, and everyone writes you off, and you just walk in, don't give a shit, and just make the night yours.
Nothing to lose. I mean, he was tested against BSD after a loss to Gaethje, where he loses the for the BMF belt or whatever, champion belt, whatever you want to call it. That could have been it. He could have been going home and said, "Look, I've done it. I've done everything I've had to do. Beat Conor McGregor twice, beat some of the greatest," and he goes in, takes a contender, wins that fight, gets this fight. I don't know. It's giving me goosebumps thinking about it. I can't wait. I wish we were there. That's all I gotta say.
Zach, would you like to hop in here?
No, I think they said basically everything. I just don't see him winning, to be completely honest with you. I mean, it would be really cool. It would be a really cool story, but I think Islam's just too dominant. Pound for pound number one. I think he's going to prove why he's pound for pound number one, and we'll see who he fights next in a couple months.
Listen, I think Dustin does have a path to victory if he doesn't jump a guillotine at all and just give himself up, because he's not going to get it. He lost to Khabib that way. He had a guillotine sunk in, and then once that goes, because those guys don't tap the guillotines, you just end up with like Khabib in this instance, and then Islam would be full mounted on you for whoever knows how long there is in the round, which is where they excel. So
I'm going to be honest too. Like, I don't think that BSD fight makes me like any more confident in Poirier. I mean, he definitely lost the first round, and Islam's going to be much better on the ground. I just see him controlling Dustin when he gets him down, which would be the opposite of what happened in the BSD fight. I think he takes him down, and he'll just end up wearing him out where he eventually finds his opening. Because, I mean, Islam is also a very opportunistic grappler where he will look for those openings and will look for those finishes. And I think it's just going to be a matter of time until he finds one.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But I mean, I rewatched that BSD fight today, and Dustin in the first round did have his moments on the feet, and it was like strictly because he started jumping like multiple guillotines and allowed himself to find that fight to the ground, where that's why I think he lost round one. But when he was just backed up against the cage swinging with BSD, he was clipping him a little bit here and there. BSD would shoot for a takedown, and then he would jump gilly, and then BSD ultimately won that round on control.
On the other side, nobody trains better than the Dagestanis. No one preps better for fights. So Islam has looked way better of a striker. Every fight, he looks like he's taking a jump. So
I just think Islam's going to be. So you can go on, Luke.
I was just saying, hopefully, and for Dustin's sake, they stand and bang for at least, the first round. Every round starts on the feet. So
yeah, I mean, every round does. I just think Islam's going to be too smart. I think he's just too smart. I don't think he's going to sit there and trade with Dustin. I mean, I think that's had to have been drilled into his mind now 1,000 times. And I know Khabib said, I'm done in the corner. I'm done in the corner. And he's coming back for this one. He's not going to lose in front of his brother. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, that especially. It concerns me especially that Khabib's in his corner, having fought Dustin and beaten him.
Khabib comes out when you fight the GOATs. That's just how it is. He's fought him. They're prepped.
Yeah, 100%. So we want to move on into maybe throw together a couple parlays here.
Yeah, let's dabble with some parlays. We'll do a nice little safe parlay, and then maybe we get a little crazy and add Dustin Poirier in. No, I'm kidding. No Dustin Poirier in the parlays, but yeah, I believe we got a little parlay going, right, Luke?
Yes. So we're gonna do, what is it? 2 parlays. We're gonna start off with a chalk parlay. I'll lead it off. My pick is gonna be Kevin Holland to win. I do not have the odds up. Let me get that up.
They got him at minus 290 on ESPN.
Okay,
I'm gonna go. You got Kevin Holland. I'm gonna go Gelton Almeida minus 270.
Ooh, that's what I was gonna go with.
All right. I'm going with Basil Hafez minus 425.
And then I mean, if we're going chalk here, I'll take Islam to cap it off. Can't really take too much credit if it hits though. I smacked the minus 680, but I mean, is what it is.
Currently on FanDuel, the 4-leg parlay, our chalk play, is plus 175.
All right. Plus money. That's what we like to see. Now, does everyone want to throw together like maybe a method of victory? Some different guys, get a little juicy parlay going?
Or we could just craft something up, I mean, between us, to be honest. I don't know. What do you guys want to go for? What are we shooting for on odds wise here?
I think if you just get in the plus, we all throw a plus leg in a parlay, see what those odds end up being, and that'll be our long shot.
I mean, if we're going with a little plus odds here thing, I know we all like Phil Rowe, so I'll take a Phil Rowe money line in there.
Ah, that's a great pick. It is a parlay chip.
Plus 132 on FanDuel.
Plus 132, I'll take that.
I don't know how big we're going here in terms of plus money line, but Roman Kopylov KO TKO at plus 220 is looking very spicy to me.
Ooh, Zach, are you cool with that? I know you're going against Kopylov.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it at all. I think if he does win, I could see him getting a finish, definitely. So, I mean, like I said, I was leaning Almeida to win that fight, but it was one of those where, I mean, leaning. I'm not firm set. I'm fine with Kopylov.
I'm gonna go. I know we're taking Kevin Holland in the chalk, but I want Kevin Holland by sub.
All right, pulling up the odds now.
I don't know how juicy that's gonna be. It's
Plus
not
280.
Be... Oh, okay. It's the juiciest leg. Damn, I did not think that was gonna be juicier because he's minus 285. I mean.
I guess I could see him getting a knockout too as well. I mean, if you're looking for a finish, he can do it either way.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Just up to you, Luke. I mean,
I know there's not a lot left.
I know there's really not a lot left to work with here. You don't really want to dabble with like the first two fights,
If we all like those 3 legs, we don't even necessarily have to add a 4th leg in there, to be completely honest. I mean, what do those odds come out to?
Dustin Poirier KO, Luke.
Well, here's what I'm stuck between. I'm stuck between Almeida by sub, because I think you can wear him out and sub him later in the rounds, or do we sprinkle on Strickland? I'll pull up the Strickland odds because I'm thinking Strickland by points is plus 195, by knockout plus 190.
I was thinking Strickland by decision, but I didn't think it was going to be that juicy. I was like, it's probably around even.
I'm going to take Sean Strickland by points. So our final parlay is Phil Rowe plus 132, Kopylov by KO or TKO plus 220, Holland by submission at plus 280, and Sean Strickland by points plus 195 to get a total value of plus 8222.
Oh,
so 10 bucks wins $822.
We're gonna be rich, boys.
Let's go, boys. That's a juicy parlay. Zach and I are gonna be in Aruba for this fight card in the sports book, so we'll have to hand them cash money, and then I can't wait to collect that, Zach.
You got to take a video,
it's real nice.
Cash in hand.
Yep. I was on the verge of buying tickets to this fight. A couple of my buddies from home are going, and then I recalled that me and my girlfriend are attending a wedding this weekend, so I will be watching via, the phone, probably stream easting it, but
Luke, you're a phenomenal boyfriend for that.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I haven't been to a wedding since I was like 5 years old, so.
Me as well.
And this one you're just going to be glued to your phone for, so that should be a good time.
No, the wedding is on Friday, but we're staying at the venue Saturday as well, so I will not be. Yeah, I'll be drinking, hopefully at a bar.
As you should be. As you should be. That's what we do on Saturday nights.
Yep.
That's what we do. All right, boys. It was an honor to talk about UFC 302 with you guys. So pumped for this card. I can't wait to be rich. I don't know about you boys. This parlay has me hyped even more so. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you tail the parlays. We'll catch you soon.